Hello, I'm Chad Saley with Comp Health, and this is the first in a series of Facebook Live interviews that we will be doing with physicians. Joining us today is Dr. Andrew Wilner. Dr. Wilner is a board-certified internist, neurologist, and epilepsy specialist. In 1982, he discovered that locum tenens was the perfect solution to achieve work-life balance. He's a medical journalist and the author of several books, including The Locum Life, A Physician's Guide to Locum Tenens. He's also currently an associate professor of neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. He's also a guest blogger for Comp Health, and his latest post is on traveling with locum tenens, and that's also our topic of discussion today. So to start things off, Dr. Wilner, why don't you talk a little bit about where you've traveled during your locum tenens assignments?
Thanks, Chad. It's great to be here. Well, you mentioned my first assignment was in Southern California back in 1982, and in those days that was a big deal for a guy coming from Rhode Island. So I got to see the Pacific Ocean and the beach. And since then, I've worked in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in Abington, just south of Boston, and in Phoenix at the Mayo Clinic. So pretty much an assortment of places, most of which I have to admit, apart from Southern California, I probably never would have gone to had it not been for locum tenens. And in particular, going to the desert to Phoenix. I'm a coastal guy. I like the Rhode Island Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, and everything in the middle has always been very secondary to me. But I had a wonderful assignment at the Mayo Clinic for a year and a half. So I moved out to Phoenix where they got cactus and a lot of sand, some scorpions. And my wife and I really developed an affinity for the desert. We want to go back. So I think locums, from a travel point of view, really expanded my horizons.
No, that's great. What would you say are the benefits of traveling for work and being able to go to all these different places?
Well, I think when you're in a job, there is such a thing as getting stuck in a rut. And when you're traveling, there's a lot of preparation for travel. And then you arrive, it's a new place with new people and new ways of doing things. From a medical point of view, there are different styles of practice. So it's not just the geography, but for a physician, you get to see how other centers do things. For example, when I went to Minnesota, they were very free with TPA for stroke. My experience, I was very conservative with TPA. I followed the guidelines very rigidly, but this was an academic center, and I noticed that they were a little loose with the guidelines. If it looked like the patient might benefit, boom, they got TPA. And I've noticed there's a lot of that in the country, but when you work in just one center, you kind of think that, well, that's the way it is. So once you go to another, I still make up my own mind about what I think is appropriate, but it's very educational to have the opportunity to see how other physicians practice.
Would you, so I was speaking of that and kind of the clinical side of things, how would you say that you going and working locum tenens in these different locations, has it changed the way that you practice medicine at all?
Oh, absolutely. The key, and I talk about this in my book, is you have to be flexible, because when you show up at a new place, you're the new guy. And your job is to take care of the patient. So you have to adjust very quickly to the electronic medical record system, which may be new to you, to a new set of consultants. I'm a neurologist, so I deal very closely with the hospitalists and a variety of other consultants, and you don't know them by name. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot about how to interact with people in a positive, engaging way to get the best care for your patients. So you don't take anything for granted. I think it's really made me a much better physician.
Would you say in your role as a professor, how does your locums experience change the way that you teach students about medicine?
Well, I think the other thing about locums is options. The residents are trying to figure out what they want to do. Some of them have been medical students here, they've been residents here, they've maybe found a mentor that they think is fantastic. And so quite naturally, they're going to do a fellowship in that area, and maybe they're going to stay on. But I encourage them to do locums, to go to a part of the country that they've never seen, to try something different, kind of round out their lives, because, you know, sometimes you can suffer from being too narrow. And I think locums is really an eye-opener. It's also a way to make a big dent in student loans. To kind of, some students feel they have to jump into a job because, well, they got to start paying off those loans. And it might not be the right job. And locums gives them the freedom to earn and pay off their loans while looking for that what might be a more appropriate job. It takes a little of the pressure off the time scale.
Oh, perfect. So let's maybe change direction just a little bit and talk about what motivated you to write a book about locum tenens.
Well, as you said, I started doing locums back in 1982. And then off and on since then, as it helped me do my other passions. So I'm a writer, and I've been a writer since high school, and I wanted to write books. So locums gave me the time and the flexibility to write books. So I think that was really one of the wonderful things about locums, and it let me travel as well. So I spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, exploring, scuba diving, and working locums to continue my career and to pay the bills. So it gave me an enormous amount of freedom and flexibility that I didn't have in the traditional jobs that I had had before as a neurologist.
No, that's great. Well, that's all. Thank you, Dr. Wilner. We really appreciate you taking a few minutes with us today. That's all that we have today for this particular interview. To learn more about Dr. Wilner and his books and just his outlook on locums, you can visit andrewwilner.com. You can also see his latest post on traveling on the CompHealth blog at comphealth.com. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in with us today.
Thanks for having me, Chad.
Thanks.